Hey yo folks, I'm your host, the Conesy with the Most, and I'm going to be joined today by Suzanne and special guest JT from the Game Crafter. Of course, this is episode 139 of the WiscoDice Tabletop Gaming Podcast! And today is March 28th, 2025. I do want to note that this episode was recorded in the tail end of February. Sorry for the little bit of delay getting this one out, but this one is worth the wait. On today's episode, we are going to cover, of course, a wonderful, brilliant interview with JT Smith from the Game Crafter. We're going to roll into talking about Protospiels, game design, and that entire process. So with that, let's go ahead and just roll right on into that interview. And hey, we are here with JT. What's going on? How's it going?
It's going great. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Suzanne, of course, you're here too.
Yep, I'm here and excited to be talking to JT again. It's been a few years since we've had you on the podcast. I know we've seen you.
Yeah.
We've been done.
It's been a little while. I think if folks don't know who you are, we probably should start with a quick little bit of introductions, but we're also going to talk about some really cool things today. Obviously, we're going to talk about the Game Crafter. We're going to talk about Protospiel and what that craziness is and why people should go to one. We're huge fans of Protospiels ourselves, and particularly Suzanne is. We are going to talk about who knows what else is going to come up here within the tabletop gaming industry, games we've been playing, all sorts of whatever. So hang on for a ride because this is going to be a fun one. So with that, JT, you want to give yourself a quick introduction here?
Sure. I'm JT Smith. I own the Game Crafter. We make print-on-demand board games. So if you're looking to make a prototype or you're looking to make a short run of a game, we can help you out with that. So you basically design your game, upload components to our website, pick out parts that you want, and then you can order a copy. You can also sell it in our website, and we'll handle all of the manufacturing and shipping it out to your customer. And we also do crowdfunding. We have a thing called the crowd sale, which you can basically, it's like a Kickstarter, except without stretch goals. The stretch goals in our system are price decreases. So for every 10 people that back your game, the game gets cheaper for everybody that's backed, regardless of when they back. And so we've got a lot of people doing that these days. And that's the 1 minute version of what the Game Crafter is and who I am.
Yeah, I think for folks that have been to Gen Con, and I've heard this a lot of times come up in various forums and discussion groups, they'll be like, "Oh, hey, who was the bits guy? Where was that booth that has all the bits?" So for those of you who are in the not industry side, maybe necessarily, or in the prototype or game design business, that's also who the Game Crafter is. So it kind of helps put folks that have been to Gen Con, that's absolutely what they are. But you're a lot more than that, obviously, and it means a lot. We've worked with a number of publishers that have benefited and used your services. Folks like Thunderworks Games, the Crossbow Games, who actually manufactures and sells through you. All sorts of different publishers that have worked with you, and all of them tell us how awesome it is to have a service like yours to help the board game industry be a part to grow and develop. So that's really meaningful, and we're awesome to be able to talk to you a little bit about those kind of things today. But Suzanne, did you have anything you wanted to kick things off with here?
Well, I had a question for JT because I think there's something else that your company does that's different than it did 3 years ago.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, like
there's actually lots of things, but I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
A couple weeks ago, I got this email message saying my shipment was coming from the Game Crafter, and I went through everything, and I hadn't ordered anything, and so I had this mystery package coming and stuff. So, and it was not something I backed, I don't think, through your Kickstarter service or your crowdfunding service. So, so Supermoon from Adam's Apple Games came. So you're also shipping now too, right?
Yeah. So a couple years ago, we started a warehouse service. So we've been warehousing for 16 years, our own stuff. But we decided to open up a much bigger warehouse. And Thunderworks, as you mentioned earlier, was our first customer in the warehouse. But we now have lots of different publishers that use our service. And one of the services that the warehouse function provides is Kickstarter fulfillment. So, like you said, we just recently finished up the Adam's Apple game, Supermoon Kickstarter. And so, yeah, that's why we saw that all over social media. Like Adam's Apple had said that on the Kickstarter, but apparently people didn't read the notes or whatever. And so there was a lot of people all over social media that are like, why is the Game Crafter shipping me something? I didn't order anything from the Game Crafter. But yeah, it was because we do fulfillment for Kickstarters for various publishers now.
Which that was very awesome. See, I am one to say I did not read the fine print on the Kickstarter because I saw Adam's Apple Games and hey, Planet Unknown expansion. I just bought. Same thing I do with Thunderworks Games and several other publishers.
Yep, so, I understand that. I totally do. Like there are certain people or companies that you just trust, and you know that they're going to do it right. But yeah, that. It was still interesting watching the chatter out on the interwebs about this. So that's one of many things. It's interesting. I wasn't sure what you were going to say. Like what was the new thing? The new thing that we're doing that we weren't doing 3 years ago.
This was the newest thing that it was this wonderful surprise because I didn't know what was coming in my package. I never got anything, saying, "Hey, we're shipping this out," outside of the shipping notes from the Game Crafter. So.
All right.
It was
I assume great. It came. You've got it now?
It came. Yeah.
Because I think we were shipping those last week, or no, like last month actually. I think is when we were shipping.
Probably.
I can't remember exactly. We
ship
a lot of things.
Ago.
It hasn't gotten to the game table yet. Let's just say that. So
okay, it's really new.
It's like many orphaned game that's been sitting on the table waiting to get played for way too long.
Yeah.
Which unlike a lot of folks, we call our pile of shrink wrap games are looking for players table, which is
that's a good name. That's better than Shelf of Shame, which is I usually hear.
I don't feel shame about them.
Yeah,
they're just looking for friends.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know. So
I have a cabinet of curiosities that I use for that. That's for my games. I've got this cabinet right over here that just has 30 or 40 games in it that are ready to play whenever somebody wants to play something. So
that's nice. I like that cabinet of curiosities. That's a good name for the unplayed games.
I don't think all of your games would fit in a cabinet, though, dear.
We could buy a bigger cabinet.
There's always more. You could move, to another house. I mean,
we did have to buy a bigger house to store all the games.
I mean, that was one of the things with buying this house is that it had game storage space.
That's always a good feature.
Yeah,
we're starting to maybe run out of that space.
Never.
But on other topics, though, so why don't we start? I mean, we can talk about crowdfunding probably till we're the next hour or two. But I'm kind of curious to talk about Protospiels and what is a Protospiel. Let's start with that.
Okay. Well, I mean, you guys obviously already know since you come to Protospiel Madison, but for the listeners at home, Protospiel is a convention that, I should say, it is a series of conventions that take place all over the world that specifically focus on game prototypes. So you play test board games that are in development by various publishers, by various game designers, and you get to give feedback to them while they're still, brewing the games. And so it's an interesting place to be if you're a game designer, obviously, to get feedback from hundreds of other people. What is like in a single weekend, you might play your game 10 or 20 times, to get it, to get that feedback from, and that's a whole bunch of different people. It's not the same people over and over again. Whereas if you're playing with your normal group of friends or you go to the local game store, you're getting feedback from the same people over and over again. And you're playing it, once a week, once a month, once a quarter, whatever it is that your schedule works out to be. So Protospiels offer this opportunity as a game designer to get feedback from a much wider group of people who all know that going in that the games are not polished yet. They're not finished because this is Protospiel. It's not a normal game convention. That said, as a playtester, there's also perks, like especially if you like to shape the future of a game. That your feedback is super valuable. So we would love to have you. But there's all kinds of perks for playtesters. One is that the badge is very cheap. It's usually, depending on which Protospiel you go, it's $10 to $20 for an entire weekend. And that includes not only your badge, but also prizes that you can win. It includes, like we give away games and T-shirts and mugs and all kinds of stuff. It includes things like food and drinks. So we, like at Protospiel Madison, we have an amazing selection of coffee and tea and hot chocolate and snacks, of different kinds. So you've got pastries and fruit and pretzels and all kinds of different things that you can eat. And then you just get to hang out with a lot of fun people too. So it's a great experience as a playtester or as a game designer. And then the final thing, that happens is that there's usually a lot of publishers and other kind of industry experts that happen to be at Protospiels because they love the hobby. And so like publishers often come scouting games or maybe even testing their own games that they've got in final development just before they publish it. We also have, luminaries, people that write comic books or write rule books or write different things for, writers and distributors and other industry professional, game store owners, all kinds of stuff like that show up at these Protospiels and can give you feedback from a perspective that is unique to whatever niche they fill in the industry. So that's the gist of what a Protospiel is, and it's my favorite convention type. This year, I decided I'm not going to go to any conventions that aren't Protospiels, except maybe Gamehole Con, which happens right here in Madison. It's very easy to go to for me because it's literally, a mile from my house. But other than that, I'm only going to Protospiels this year. I think I'm going to hit 6 or 7 of them over the course of the year. I've already hit, 3 this year? Yeah, I think 3. And we're only in February, so
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm a little jealous. 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
I wish we had that kind of PTO to be able to travel to that many cons.
We could just skip the other conventions we go to, Conesy.
Yeah. You would be totally okay with that.
Yeah. I love the Protospiels. And for me going as a tester, it's great to sit at the tables and see different people's ideas and talk with them about how they've developed. And then also when you get a couple game designers at the same table and they play it and then they give each other feedback too, just listening and watching how the game designers' brains work so differently with like designing the game than mine does with just like trying to figure out how to play the game and everything. It makes the whole gaming experience, whether you're playing a prototype or another game, it's kind of just you're in awe at how much work goes into creating a quality game.
There's a huge amount of work that goes into people that play games don't usually realize just how hard it is to make a really good, tight board game. But if you go to a Protospiel, you'll find out real fast how easy it is to make a crappy one. Because, it's the early part of the design process. It is certainly not for everybody. It is a really great insight or view into the creative mind. And if you're into that sort of thing, great. But if you're only in board games for that final polished experience, this is not what you're going to generally find. You will find diamonds in the rough. You will find games that are absolutely amazing, and you're like, why isn't this already published? I play several of those at every Protospiel, but there are also plenty of them that are just like they were made up this morning. It's written on some scraps of paper. It is bad. Even some that have been worked on for years. Like I've got games that I've worked on for years that are terrible still because I just can't figure out how to make it work. But so you're going to see the full gamut, and that certainly isn't for everybody. But I love it. It's my favorite. It's my favorite thing. I not just to play test my own games, but to be able to give feedback to people, to see their creativity and how they're applying things. It makes me interested in the gaming hobby more. So
yeah, and it's also, I don't know, I'm sure because you've gone to so many more of these than I have, but I've seen some games like through different iterations over a couple different years where they brought it back and they've refined it, and it's just like, wow, you did take that piece of advice that our group gave you, and look what's, and now you're going even further, and hopefully they'll come out. Like I've got, some that I keep watching for when's it going to go to, crowdfunding, because I'm going to back it because I had fun testing it.
And that's a point there, Suzanne, when you sit down and we go to these Protospiels, one of the questions I always ask, unless it's a publisher that's trying something, like when we sat with Adam from Adam's Apples Games, so I already know what your intention is to do with these games, and you know how to do it. But with most of the designers, I sit down and I'm like, so what's your intention to do with this game? Because my advice to you is going to be different if your intention is to try to find a publisher to publish it versus self-publish. Because it's a major difference. And it's surprising how many times I'll talk to somebody and they're like, yeah, I plan on self-publishing this. You don't have a clue right now what you're getting yourself into or what the steps are, because I'll start talking about like steps that I've heard just talking to publishers. Yeah. And I'm on the content creation space, right? And it's a eye-opening for a lot of them to go, oh, okay. And then I'm also hearing while we're sitting there in those conversations after you play a game at Protospiel with a designer. Well, I was thinking about self-publishing. Well, if they are thinking about self-publishing, then they probably do care about what the graphic design is and the iconography and things like that. And I've heard those kind of conversations come up quite often after you get done playtesting a game. But if the person says, oh, hey, I'm looking for a publisher to take this over. Well, graphics design doesn't make a kill of beans difference. Why are we sitting here wasting the person's time telling them about their graphic design? Like, we want to talk about mechanisms and smoothing out the gameplay and stuff like that and making sure it's shiny enough for a publisher.
You are so right about, and that's a very smart observation of, like, what is the purpose of this game? What do you want to do with this game? Because there are lots of different reasons, more than actually that you just mentioned. You mentioned self-publishing versus finding a publisher, and that is the majority of folks, right? They're going to be covered by those two things. But there are so many more beyond that. You have some that are playtesting the mechanics of a game because they're going to turn it into a video game, and they're trying to get it right before they spend all the hours coding it, because it takes a lot longer to code it than it does to create a paper prototype. There are also people who are making they just like the design challenge of making the game. They don't have any plans to publish the game ever. That's me mostly. Like, I do publish some games here and there, but it's mostly because a friend wants a copy for themselves, or a publisher happens to see it accidentally or whatever. And so I've published a few things here and there for those reasons, but I don't generally publish my games. That's not my intent. The process of designing is the interesting thing to me. And then there are other people that are just designing for their friends and family. It's like their own, they want a finished game, but they only really need one at the end. They're not looking to publish it, to a wide audience, that sort of thing. I've seen other ones too, but they get more and more limited use case from those examples. But anyway, that you're so on topic with who is the audience, or what do you want to do with this game? What's the audience for this game? Those kinds of questions. It's really important to like set the context for feedback.
Absolutely, and I think when you're sitting down at the table, and maybe we should step back. I've dove right into the deep end of what my experience is. If you are new to a Protospiel, whether you're a designer or you are a playtester, certainly Suzanne and I come at it from the playtester side of things. But what do you expect? What's the experience like? Show up and somebody assigns you a table like you're at other conventions, or how does this thing work?
Yeah, that's a good point. Protospiel is very different from most conventions you will ever go to, in that it is very much open forum. There's no set schedule other than when do the doors open, when do the doors close. And there are no assignments of anything other than what is your badge type, right? Like, are you there as a publisher, a playtester, a game designer, something else? So those are really it. Everything else is done by sort of even flow. It's about how things happen. So as a game designer, you're wanting to get your games play tested. So you basically just go find a table and set up your game, and then you wave your hand or set up a flag or whatever. Each Protospiel does things a little bit differently in that regard, saying, "Hey, I'm looking for playtesters." And so then playtesters come around, they sit down, play your game. And playtesters could be anybody. It's not just people who are there just strictly to playtest like you guys, but obviously, like you said, publishers, designers, other people, everybody's welcome to be a playtester. So you basically set up your game, you flag down some playtesters, and then you play it, give feedback, and we'll get into the details of that feedback portion in a little bit. But then the expectation is that every hour of time that you're spending at a table playtesting your game as a designer, you should also be giving that amount of time back as a playtester to other designers. So we sit down, we play my game, and let's say that Suzanne has designed a game as well. So then we say, "Hey, anybody else here got a game?" And then usually the same people that are at that table would flip out the old game and put in the new one and continue playing with the same group. And then that way the flow just keeps happening naturally. At a certain point, people have to go for a bathroom break, or they want to go talk on their phone, or they want to go to lunch, whatever. So the group breaks up, and then you're off with a new group of people playtesting somebody else's games. But it's that sort of thing, rinse and repeat for 3 days over the course of a weekend. And I mean, if you're hardcore, you're there from opening to close, which is usually something like 9 a.m. to midnight every day, that's pretty hardcore. But obviously not everybody does the whole hardcore thing, but there are fools like me that do. So
there's enough to test, at least in the Madison one, there's enough to play test and enough people to test your games that you could easily fill up that entire time, I would imagine, and not realize how much time has gone by.
Oh yeah, it's super easy. It's super easy to fill up that time over the course of a weekend. There's so many people, especially like you said, Protospiel Madison is a little bit different animal than most of them. The Protospiel Madison is the biggest one as far as I'm aware, based on number of people. It's about 250-ish people. And then there are some other ones that are pretty damn close to that, like Protospiel Minneapolis and Chicago are both over 200, probably 220, something like that. So, but a lot of Protospiels are actually fairly small. They're like 50, 60, 70 people. Like I went to Protospiel Cleveland, what was that, 3 weeks ago? And I think there were maybe 60 people there for the course of the weekend. It also wasn't from 9 a.m. to midnight every day. It was like, I want to say it was in a game store. So it was like game store hours, 11 a.m. to, let's say 9 p.m. or something during that time. And, but even with that, even with the fewer people, even with game store hours, that sort of thing, there were still plenty of people there to play test with, plenty of games to play test. Plenty of both designers and playtesters. There's a lot of work to be done in game design, and you want to be able to play your game more than once. So every game gets repeated a number of times over the course of the weekend. Just with different people each time, generally speaking.
From that was a great setup to what Protospiel is and what it's experienced, and that's exactly what the experience is like. That I've only been to Protospiel Madison. Same with Suzanne. You've done some other play testing, Suzanne, that you've drugged me into once in a while. But it is such an awesome experience. And if you're in the Madison area or just want to travel out for a weekend of just experiencing this, I'd strongly recommend doing Protospiel Madison in particular, because it's a great event and it's very welcome. The environment's very welcoming. And there's a great chance to meet, not only to meet a bunch of wonderful designers and publishers, but to meet other gamers that are very interested in the process. And this year we were very surprised. I had a personal friend of mine I didn't even know he was doing any game design on the side. I'm not sure how much he realized I was doing content creation in this space. And we we bumped into each other, and he's like, "Hey, can you play test my game?" And it was exactly, his game was definitely one of those, yeah, you need to take that back to the drawing board. But he had gotten to the point where he was, I think I have something clever enough here that I might want to get serious about it, and brought it to Protospiel to have other people experience it. But once you get that experience, you get that playthrough of a game, we do get to that point in the game where now it's time to provide feedback, right? And that's part of the most important part of the process, is that feedback process. And this is kind of where I jumped the gun earlier, and I was talking about my approach to feedback, but kind of curious as to how you approach it, JT, because I only approach this based on what I think might be important to somebody, not necessarily what someone seasoned like yourself for Protospiels has experienced with developers.
Yeah, that's a great question, and honestly, I'll bet you don't actually realize how important you are in this equation. And when I say you, I mean both of you as playtesters. You think that you're giving feedback at the end of the process. In reality, you are giving feedback at every turn. When I'm explaining the game, I'm watching, are you getting it or are you glazed over? Like how, and that's partially how good are you grokking what's going on with the game, but it's also how good is my teach. And my teach is terrible, by the way. I'm really bad at teaching my own games. I'm much better at teaching other people's games for some reason. I think it's because I rush it. When it's my game, I always feel like I'm going too slow and I just go through it fast. But anyway, as a designer, watching playtesters do every part of the step along the way is really incredibly valuable. So it's during the setup, during the teach. Are you grokking your turns? Are there steps that I've explained that you're missing every time as you take your turn every time? Because that means that I haven't designed something well. It's so irrelevant that you're forgetting about it, right? And it shouldn't be in the game because you're giving me that feedback by simply not remembering a rule that I have taught you. You are giving me feedback that rule isn't important. And you don't even realize that as a playtester, that you're giving feedback that whole time before you even open your mouth at the end for, to say, this is what I liked, what I didn't like. The entire time, every single step you take during that game is feedback. And it is amazing to watch. A lot of times in Protospiels, you don't even play a complete game. We'll play for an hour and then give feedback at that point. So if the game isn't done or isn't close to done, we've probably learned enough as a designer from this playtest to fix whatever's broken at this point. So let's move on to what are your thoughts about this game? Have you guys experienced that, where the game ends before it's actually ended?
Yeah, several times. In fact, the game I just mentioned of my buddies, it was very clear we hit a point of brokenness in the game where it was just not going to progress well at all. And he was like, yeah, we should just stop here. Let's talk about what happened. What did you think? What was the experience like?
Yeah. And Suzanne?
Yeah. And there's been several games where it's like you had mentioned, where they are looking for feedback on a specific aspect of the game. So we just play enough rounds or enough hands or whatever to go through and get a feel for that, to provide some feedback. So we're not playing the full game. They're not ready sometimes to even do how the end game scoring is even going to turn out.
Right.
Yeah, I've run into that before.
Stuff. So,
yep.
And like one of my favorite ones this last year, I think it was the designer gave us the game with the rules, and they wanted us to test the rules to see if we could set up the game.
Oh, a blind test.
And it was like to see if they could set up the game and if we could figure out how to start it from how the rules were written. And that's about all we did. And I don't remember if that was a table you were at, Conesy, or if that was a different playtest event.
I think that was a different playtest event. I don't remember doing something like that. Although I was thinking that would be, I was wondering if that was the kind of thing you'd also see at Protospiel occasionally. Yeah.
That's usually something, well, it should be something you're doing once the game is complete and the rules are ready to be tested. This is kind of one of the final stages before publishing or sending to a publisher, that sort of thing, generally speaking. A lot of designers get to that step way too early. They're playtesting rules that will eventually get crossed off right? And now you're just wasting people's time when you do that. But when the game is at a fairly complete state, then you really want to get those rules play tested, because as a designer, you're not going to be in the box when the game ships to a customer. So you need to make sure that they can understand what you got going on. Because unlike a video game, a board game doesn't enforce its own rules, right? It has a rule book that you have to enforce the rules. So yeah, that it's interesting that you experienced a blind test. That is like I said, that's a pretty rare thing, because or at least it should be a fairly rare thing, because it should mean that the game is approaching the end point of the design process.
Yeah, and I don't remember how far along it was in design. I just remember like very boring, white printer paper typed out rules to read. So that part was very early.
Yeah, and that actually is a fairly common mistake too, because you should be testing the rules. Now, it doesn't have to be laid out all perfectly. Like, it doesn't have to be obviously a desktop publishing kind of thing, but it should have all of the diagrams and whatever is going to be in the rule book, even if they're not laid out, the right place. Mm-hmm. They should be all there. All the visuals should be there when you're doing that blind play test, because otherwise you're not really testing the rules, right? Because real players are going to skim the text and look at the pictures and figure it out from that, right? So all of that needs to be there.
I can say as reviewers and content creators, we've been sent enough board games that some publisher has thought, hey, I'm ready to take it to that state where we're able to send games to a reviewer, and Suzanne and I will sit down to try to figure out how to play it, and the rules are so bad, we're like, I just can't figure this out. Can't. I'm sorry, publisher. You're either going to have to set up a call with us and explain how to play this game, or we're going to have to send it back to you, or whatever the case might be in that case, because it's just that bad. So I certainly see that there's probably some space to need to do some things like that for some of these people too. But it definitely doesn't feel like that's the kind of play test I've ever experienced at a Protospiel. I'm definitely sitting down, somebody's explaining a game to me, and yes, there are some people who cannot teach a game that are designing really good games. Like, once I figured out, like, I can't remember this year at Protospiel at Madison, we had a game where the person who was, the designer sat there and he had no ability to really properly teach a game. So, but once we pieced out what you were supposed to do, the game was really clever and we had a lot of fun with it. I remember that. But it was, trying to understand what he was trying to get across to play the game was very difficult.
Yeah. Teaching is a skill. Teaching a game is a definite skill. And it's really important. One of the biggest things I see designers doing, like, I'm the opposite. I go too far the other direction. The one thing that I see from too many designers is they try to explain every little nuanced nook and cranny of the game before you start playing. And the cognitive load is so high for the playtester that they forget everything, they might remember the first 2 minutes and the last 2 minutes of what you said. They're not going to remember the 20 minutes that happened in between. So I would recommend, as a game designer teaching a game, try to keep your teach to like 5, maybe 10 minutes, and then explain other stuff kind of as it comes up in the game. Give people enough so that they know how to take their first turn, and whatever information they need to do to start the game. But if you try to give them every nook and cranny, they're going to tune out. They're going to start looking at their phones. They're going to have the deer in the headlights, eyes glazed over. It's going to be bad. And so on my end, I go the other way and don't teach enough. I'm just like, done. Here, play the game. And people are like, what are you talking about? So, yeah, I really need to slow down.
Yeah, we just sat down and did a big playthrough this past weekend of a game, Andromeda's Edge. Big game, big box, whatever, big rules. Mm-hmm. And yes, this isn't a Protospiel game. This is a game we're going to be doing a review on. Should be coming out soon on the podcast, so stay tuned.
Awesome.
Be sure you listen to the show for the review of that game. But the teach was 40 minutes that the person sat down and taught. I can guarantee that I was tuned out, walking out of the room, attending to other stuff since we were hosting at about the 4-minute mark. So you'd already lost lost my attention for the most part. And I kept walking back and catching parts of the teach and going, oh, hey, I got that rule wrong, or I misunderstood that thing from a previous play. But it's very hard for me personally to sit and listen to somebody explain complex mechanisms for 10 plus minutes. I need to start fiddling with stuff. You need to get me active with fiddling with stuff. Like that's my best way I'm going to learn it. And I'm probably going to make a mess of it the first time through. So if you're trying to teach me an overly complex game the first time through, expect me to find whatever's boneheaded wrong strategically to do. That's the thing you probably need to fix to make it a little better, because it's the thing that my learning style definitely will expose in a first play.
Yeah. Well, that's that itself is good feedback. Something I rarely ever do, but I think we should, because of this conversation that we're having right now, is I usually give tips for what designers should do at a Protospiel. I think I should give tips for what a playtester should do at a Protospiel. If you happen to be there, one of the things I would appreciate as a playtester is note the time that I start talking and note the time that I finish talking. Tell me that it took me 12 minutes or 7 minutes or 25 minutes or whatever to explain the game. That does a couple of things. One is it tells me if I'm going too long, too short, that sort of thing. But it also tells me what time did we actually start the teach, and therefore I only want to use about an hour of your time, so we only have a half hour left to play, or whatever. So start a timer, or just note the time. That would be a very valuable thing. Also, if I'm going on too long, or you are like, you're over explaining, you're under explaining, you're whatever, speak up. Don't just nod your head and be like, yeah, okay, I'll figure this out later. Because as a designer, I should learn to teach my games better, right? And so you should teach me to teach my game, if you're willing to give that sort of feedback. Now, I realize that means you're willing to put yourself out there and be like, you might come across as rude or whatever. It's worth it to us. We would rather you be rude or, let us know that we've done something wrong. So be vocal as a playtester. When something doesn't make sense or something is bothering you, speak up. You don't have to wait till the end to give your feedback, right? So those would be very helpful kinds of things. From a game designer, as a playtester playing my game, I would love for you to tell me everything. Tell me when we started. Tell me how long I took. Tell me when you find something you don't like, or that I didn't explain something well enough, or that I'm droning on too long, just like this sentence right here, droning on too long. So let me know.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I've actually seen designers actually jotting down like little timestamps while they're not only explaining the game, but throughout the course of the game while they're observing things or whatever. And I know a lot of designers like to play, they're probably jumping in a seat to play the game, but I certainly appreciate it when the designer is also just, I want 4 people at the table. I'm taking a back seat, and I'm going to make sure that I'm spending my time observing what's going on versus playing the game. From a playtester perspective, I really appreciate it. It's actually the way WiscoDice approaches when we run games at conventions as well. We're there to make sure everybody understands how to play the game, what they're doing. We're very rarely playing in any game we're running as a team, and all of the team is like that, because at the end of the day, like from our perspective, we want to make sure everybody at the table had fun. But from a playtester perspective, I've got to imagine it's a lot easier to catch on to somebody struggling or having a hard time with a game, or maybe not understanding something, or getting that cue, whatever it is, from them. I think we're pretty vocal during the playtest process ourselves, including during the teach, if we don't understand something, to try to clarify it. Maybe I'm sometimes a little too vocal, but I think it's very important to that process. And it's really awesome, I think, from my perspective, to be in that creative juice process and help provide that insight that somebody may not have thought about with a game or a mechanism quite often. It's really quite unique in that perspective. It's awesome to see the industry from that part of it. Now, how a game gets that far to even to the Protospiel perspective, I don't really know what that looks like because I haven't taken that on ever, and I'm not sure I ever will. But I'm sure there's a lot of different processes that folks out there. How do you, JT? I know you've created some games. You keep mentioning, or you've mentioned a lot of your games that you never even bothered to do anything with, other than get them through the drawing board. But what does that process look like before you even get to a Protospiel for yourself?
There's a lot of work that goes into that. So obviously you got to come up with a kernel of an idea. Just what is it that your game is about? And so a lot of times that will start with one of two things. It'll either start with a mechanism, and that's most often inspired by some game you've played, right? You've encountered a mechanism and you're like, I want to do a riff on that thing. But sometimes you come up with something unique. It's just that board games have been around for thousands of years, so coming up with something unique is pretty hard. So it'll either start with a mechanism, or it will start with the story, the theme, the decoration of the game. I want to make a game about surviving in a post-apocalyptic, colony, that sort of thing. I want to create a game about how the vegetables and the fruit in my garden are going to war. Whatever the thing is, right? Like, you'll come up with that hook that gets you embedded into this thing, whatever it is. It's either a mechanism or a theme, and then you'll iterate on that process, usually in your head for a little bit. Then it'll hit a notepad, or in my case, I can't read my own handwriting, so I put it into my computer. And then you'll go into the prototyping phase. And as a designer, that when you're experienced, the goal is to get that thing to the table as fast as humanly possible, right? So don't spend a lot of time on an idea, because most ideas are shelved after the first playtest. So you're looking to, write down some cards or make a board or whatever it is that you need for your game. And you literally just test it, usually yourself or with whoever you happen to live with, your kids, your wife, your husband, your, extended family, your friends that come over all the time, whatever it is. You do a quick test, and you just try to get something out to see, is there anything here, right? Is there, and usually there's not. That's the unfortunate part. But from there, you'll go into the iteration process, right? You'll refine it, you'll test it, you'll refine it, you'll test it, you'll refine it, you'll test it. You'll use a number of different tools along the way for that. So these days, there's stuff like Tabletop Simulator that you can test things online with people, or you can just print stuff out at home with your inkjet printer. You can use something like the Game Crafter to print out good copies, which I do immediately because nobody can read my handwriting, so I don't do handwritten ones. And then you might also use tools to design those things. A lot of people, they'll start with whatever image editing program they use, and that's a mistake. So like, let's say Microsoft Paint or Photoshop or whatever the thing is that it's easy to start there because you already know that thing. And I said it's a mistake, but it's not a mistake because it does allow you to get started right away. The big mistake, though, is that those programs don't allow you to iterate quickly. Let's say you're making a very simple game like Uno, right? I don't know how many cards are in an Uno deck. Is it like 100 cards or something? I don't know. 80, 100, 60, whatever it is. Let's say there's 100 cards in an Uno deck. I don't even know what there is. But let's say you make your first version of that and it just has the numbers and colors written on it. Well, you want the next edition to actually show the colors, not the word green, but it actually should be green, right? Well, then people point out that, the number should be in the upper left corner of the card as well, so that you can fan out the cards and look at them. Every time you make one of those iterations, if you're using a tool like Photoshop or Paint, you have to remake all 100 of those cards every time. And that's a problem, because over the course of a game design, depending on the complexity of the game, you could make 100 copies, 1,000 copies of that game over the course. If you have to edit 100 cards 1,000 times, that's a lot, right? You're developing 100,000 cards at that point. So you should use a tool like Component Studio. There are others on the market, but Component Studio is the one that I make. And you should use something like that is purpose built for designing game components, because what it does is it allows you to hook up a spreadsheet to a to a design tool, and that will literally, you design one card and the other 99 are designed for you automatically. You design one, hook it to a spreadsheet that has all the data in it to generate the other cards. Done. You've exported and you have a new copy of your game in 2 minutes rather than 2 hours or whatever it took you to edit 100 cards. And that is a game changer as a game designer, to move into that iterative process so much faster, because everything about game design is about failure until you succeed. You want to fail as fast as you possibly can, which means you need to get the next iteration out as fast as you possibly can.
That's a very interesting insight, and I hadn't really thought about the iteration process in game design, but that certainly is something that really you need to take seriously. And I don't think I've ever heard anybody that I've talked to mention that. So I think that opens up a whole new rabbit hole for a future time we chat with you, is to go down that process maybe a little bit more and understand what's out there and how someone who'd be interested in doing game design would approach that side of the market.
I'd love to talk more about that.
And I'll say, while you were talking about the iterations, that gave context to what I've seen some of the game designers that have better games out there, like that have not better, more well-known games out there, or that have been more successful and everything. While I've been testing their games, they've done iterations, and some of them have just literally like gone, you know what, that card's not working right. Pull all them out of the deck, put a whole new one in that they wanted, or make some little changes as they were doing it.
I've certainly seen them scribble on cards and be like, okay, we're just changing that to this right now. Like,
yeah, exactly. And I do have a trivia fact for all the listeners as well, the three of us. There are 108 cards in an Uno deck.
Okay. I've learned something tonight.
Somebody has used the power of Google.
Yep.
All right.
I mean, maybe on, your next trivia challenge, you might need that.
Indeed.
Okay, so real quick, as we probably should get close to wrapping things up, I would want to just mention real quick, if you're even contemplating game design, if you're ready to get just spare components so you have something to throw your idea on the table, or you're to the point where, hey, I'd like to just, I want to just get a copy of this game produced that I think is perfect because I want to play it with my family and that's all we're ever going to play it with, or whatever it is, you can go over to thegamecrafter.com, right? I got the website right?
That's right.
Thegamecrafter.com. And there's tools there where you can upload your files and get your game produced. And if you're in the market for some really cool indie games that don't always get a lot of noise, like our friends over at Crossbow Games, who have great games like Draft Horse and Koba, which are all available. They're little tin games that are available through Game Crafter. You just literally go there. They manufacture your copy, is custom manufactured just for you. When you get it, that's the copy that they made just for you. They printed it off just for you, so you can feel special. Like, you got this cool copy that, yeah, there's other people that have Koba or whatever, but this is going to be your copy that was made just for you. It wasn't mass produced, and there wasn't like 500 of these sitting in a warehouse or something. So it's a really cool experience about shopping with the Game Crafter as well, if you're coming at it from our perspective. So we strongly recommend, folks, if you're out there listening to this, that you check out the Game Crafter. Of course, we're blessed. They're local here in Madison as well. So we can, not that we shop there's no place to shop, but we have the opportunity to have just another wonderful cog in the tabletop gaming industry in our neighborhood and in our close proximity.
Indeed. It is great to see the Madison community come out. We actually we don't have a shopping place, like you said. We don't have a physical storefront, but we do have a game room at the Game Crafter, and we often host events at the game room, and we get to see the greater community come out and play games with us. So.
All right. So with that, thank you so much for coming on, JT. We really do appreciate it. I hope everybody enjoyed this out there. If you have any thoughts or comments, you can find out all the information over on WiscoDice.com to send us a note. Until next time, keep rolling those dice.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. Make sure you leave a review of this show wherever your favorite place is to find podcasts. Oh, and by the way, give us a like on our Facebook page. And don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, or Pinterest while you're at it. If you haven't looked recently, make sure you catch up on the blog at WiscoDice.com. Hey, Brian, what's that site?
Ah, darn, I forget. Justin, what's our website again?
WiscoDice.com.
That's right, it's WiscoDice.com. And until next time, everyone, peace out.